Welcome to Bird Seats. Thanks as always for listening. This is Joe Bird. I've got a really good longtime friend of mine who I met in real estate, Adam Hyp. Adam Hyp is here with us today. Adam Hyp, I met him. He was a title rep, and the title company he worked with was in our office, or they had some space in our office or whatever. But we kind of hit it off instantly and became, I would consider, friends right away, more than just business associates.
Mhm.
We've stayed in touch. I mean, gosh, that was probably 2014, maybe
Yeah.
15. So we stayed in touch for 10 years now.
Yep.
When we were out in Colorado, we talked about the Red Rocks. We met up with Adam at Red Rocks. He came and saw the Avett Brothers with us and the Red Fog or whatever that was, which was really cool. But I've always been impressed with Adam. He knows what he wants. He knows what he cares about. And he's so focused on whatever that is that he gets it done. So Adam, tell us a little bit more about you, introduce yourself, all that stuff.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Josh, appreciate you, allow me to sit and chat with you because like kind, it's really just finding those people that are similarly minded and, being an athlete, most of my young life, you always find that you play to the level of the people that you're playing with. If you put people in your life that you're the best in the group, where you're going to atrophy. Or worse yet, like what I did most of my time growing up is be the king turd. And you feel good in the moment, but it's doing nothing for your game. And so we've stayed in touch mostly because you're one of those guys that drives me. And so when I keep those people around, I tend to be, just kind of watching from afar, and it keeps me motivated. And those types of people are rare, not only to watch them and emulate them and really like what they do, but then to get along with them to boot. So having those two things, align with us, it was like, well, we're going to find a way to work together or intertwine our business and personal lives because we're like kind.
Exactly.
And I've said this, the projects I have going on right now, the only things that matter is first, do you enjoy the people you're working with? From an integrity standpoint first, but if you're not having fun, then it's going to have an end to it.
Yeah.
Then you worry about, is there a market for whatever you're trying to grow? But I've found that there's been so many projects and business opportunities that I've been in that it wasn't with the right people or there wasn't the right integrity. And without that, it's a house of cards.
Exactly.
So as I've grown, it started out as a title rep and just being a sales rep, but mostly in a very ambiguous service that there was no distinguishing factors between company to company. It was the same product and the same price. And so you really had to go, okay, what is it about me that I can do to bring added value to make my company more valuable than the competition? And you start digging granularly into that and think, well, this isn't about me then. It's like, how do I make my customers grow? And then I'll get mine by proxy.
Exactly.
And live in that kind of way that it's not really about me. Started to kind of take on a life of its own to where now, still in sales, but my passion has always been competition and staying young. And, I've always joked and like, I'm a 16-year-old with a good credit score. That's the mentality. I want to live life constantly where, I was just talking, the reason that I'm back in Maryland, Pennsylvania area is because I'm helping my 98-year-old grandmother who is still independently living. And I want to allow that to happen as long as possible. It's good to know that the genes are there.
Absolutely.
But there's some preventive maintenance and some things that have to happen in order to not live a tapered life. To live one that you go to 90 and then drop right off the table.
Exactly.
So now it's just taking those sales skills and that growth. And now I'm just working in health and longevity and different products and services that put your body back together when it breaks down or keeps it from breaking down to begin with. And I think that's one of the things that we share is a lot of your recovery.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at the different ways now with the new evolution of healthcare. It's no longer sick care. With the ushering in of RFK, it's like there's a new wave, there's a new sheriff in town. And we're starting to see the veil torn off a lot of these old institutions.
Yep.
Psychedelics is one major cog that, being in Boulder, Colorado the last 10 years, you see that that's something that they've been exploring for a long, long time. But having players come in that played for Phil Jackson, both at the Bulls days and in the Knicks days,
Yeah.
and finding out that they were microdosing in all of those games.
That's wild.
And you're
Yeah.
like, well, wait, what? Like, so you're starting to see these things that have been used for years, long before, traditional medicine.
Right.
And now it's one of the things I love about the younger generation is if you can't tell them why, then it doesn't exist.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of that starting to go on. It's like, well, why is that illegal?
Right.
Well, because it is not good enough.
Yeah.
And so these little things are starting to get interwoven in how many other supplements or taboo items that were not part of traditional medicine are now starting to get explored.
Exactly.
And so there's one, I mentioned to a good friend of mine, a longevity conference out in Vegas that I went to 2 months ago. And I highly recommend anybody just tuning in to A4M.
A4M. Okay.
And you just have booths from the best practitioners to the best technologies to the best supplements and the best speakers all collaborating. And when you get all those people all in the same room all at once, it's much like a great concert. You almost get this in the zone vibe
Yep.
where you're like, oh my God, we're moving things forward here.
Yeah.
And so every year I come back from that and I'm like, oh, holy crap. I mean, I'm putting little things into my game, and you start to see a lot of these high-end influencers, for all these big products, whether it's the Ben Greenfields of the world or the Brian Johnsons of the world or the Gary Breckers of the world, hanging out with all of them, having coffee with them, chatting with them, learning how they got into it. And it ain't too dissimilar from how I got into it.
Right.
They just, like we were just talking about, you find your passion and you get really, really, really granular with it. And it's really kind of, as I watch your production system here, it's like you got really granular with it. And I love to see those little hobbies where it's not just a passing fad. It's like, no, I want to study this a little bit.
Yeah. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Amen.
Like, let me rephrase it. I'll do random things that I do once, and who cares if I really know how to do it if I'm doing it once. But like, if I'm going to do it, I figure it out. Now that can hold me back a lot of the times because I'm afraid to not do it well enough. And
Get gun shy.
failure is my biggest enemy in life, and I avoid it at all costs. But I overly avoid it because I don't take enough risk because I'm so afraid of doing that. So, like I've talked about it on this podcast before, where it's like I have these songs I started, but I have a hard time finishing them because I'm just afraid that they're not going to live up to the potential. That's something I work through all the time. But yeah, you got to get granular. What really impresses me about you, and it's kind of what I alluded to in the very beginning, you stay very focused on the now. You don't ignore the future, and you don't completely forget about the past, but you are in tune with what's important to you right now. And I think I can't remember what podcast I was listening to, but I was listening. Oh no, it was um, oh gosh, what was it? It was a seminar I went to. I think it was Bethany Frankel, the skinny chick lady. She was being interviewed in this conference, and they were basically saying like, how has she stayed so relevant for so long? 'Cause she started off, and her career has gone in all these different directions. And she goes, because I don't think about anything other than right now. I focus on what's in front of me right now, and I go 100% into it. And I think it's organic, and people think, oh, she's relevant because she's relevant to herself because she's here right now. She's not worrying about what happened. Obviously you can't forget the future and the past, but it's very practical. And like just see you and your journeys and industry changes and things like that. But it's always been, if you didn't know you, you might look at that on a high level and say, in a bird's eye view, to use my tagline, you might say, oh, he bounces all over the place. But if you know you, it's been a true like journey.
Right.
There's a map. It's not, oh, there's variables,
Right.
because that wasn't your mission. Your mission wasn't the industry you're in. Your mission was empowerment, betterment, etc. And no matter what industry you're in, that's what you were doing. I think that's awesome.
Well, and I'm glad you see it, because then that's often, we're always so much of our own worst critic that it's good to have that kind of validation from the outside, because you never think you're as good, and you're always kind of a little bit more dogged towards yourself. So I'm glad that comes off. I mean, because it's conscious. I'm usually not that way naturally.
Gotcha.
I'm very, a lot of anxiety, a lot of like worry, a lot of preparing for 10, 15, 20 different eventualities, all of which will never happen.
Yeah.
and to live life that way, it's exhausting.
Hmm.
And so just years of living a certain way and going, I don't like that.
Hmm.
Or meeting somebody that is simple, aloof. I have a lot of friends that are Boulder granola
Hmm.
and they don't care for anything. Like nothing bothers them. Their life is great. You always feel zen around them. It's not that they don't have chaos. It's like, well, I just want to hang out closer to that. Like again, hanging out with those athletes that are better than you almost get it by osmosis.
You do. I
But
100% you
even
do.
before I walked in here, thinking about the other stuff I've got this weekend and next week and traveling, and it was like I just took 3 deep breaths, the nervous system reset,
Yep.
and then walk through the door as if, all right, this is what we're doing now.
Now I'm here.
And people respect that because and you see too many people not meet you eye to eye. Even when you're, just pass them, you say, hey, how you doing? Younger generation included is they always have their head down.
Yep.
Well, it just shows you're not in the moment,
Correct.
and it's a respect thing when we were growing up, but it just shows that you're thinking about other things.
Exactly.
So I'm glad you saw it, but for me, it's got to be conscious because I'm always thinking, what do I got to do tomorrow, next week, and then the 3 different things that are going to go wrong that I got to plan for.
Absolutely.
And that's just it's got to keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
You know,
So one of the sayings I've had and I've talked about on the show is, and it's a tagline that I came up with: worry guarantees misery. And if you like, it's the worst thing. So, whatever's going on, something really bad happens, you're going to be miserable. You don't know if it's going to happen. It may or may not happen. And you can play the odds, you can figure out the odds. But let's just say, for example, it's 50-50 chance that the worst thing is going to happen. It's probably not even that. It's probably 1% that the worst thing to happen. There might be another bad thing, but it won't be all the way spiraled worse as you built it up in your head. And you need to be aware of it and cognizant of it and prepare for it so it doesn't blindside you. But if you sit there and worry about it, you're miserable when you're worrying. So it may or may not happen, but you've guaranteed that you're going to be miserable.
Yep.
The worry guarantees misery.
Well, you've hear so many people go through all these different self help books and gurus to talk about. There's so many ways to talk about that, but just like the death by 1,000 cuts
Oh, yeah.
is, I think what they say, we're the only organism that punishes itself thousands of times for the same mistake.
Yep.
And that's just I try to take that to heart.
Yeah.
Is like be hard on yourself because if you're a driver, you don't want to mess up. You want to be the best you can be. You don't want to be lazy. And it's good to have that. Like all these things of worry are born out of not wanting to make a mistake, which is good.
Yeah.
But you don't want to take it to a point where it becomes counterproductive.
Correct.
And that's where worry, anxiety, because what they say, stress is just lack of preparation. And if you feel it and you're still prepared, then it's not real.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. You just have to ask yourself when you're stressing, okay, am I prepared for what I'm going into? If you say no, well, duh, then that stress is there for a reason, damn
Right.
it. Listen
Exactly.
to it and do the work.
Yeah.
You're stressed because you don't want to do the work.
Right.
So just be real. You're lazy.
Right.
You ain't stressed.
Exactly.
And so that's what I have to ask myself first. Am I lazy?
Yeah.
And then if it's not that, then it's like, okay, then I'm just in my head, in my own head. What do I got to do? I got to take a deep breath. I got to catch a buzz. What's my vehicle to getting out of my own head?
Right.
Usually it's a sport, like this morning, like it's every morning, 6 a.m. jujitsu.
There you go.
We're just talking about everybody needs, especially men, but I think every male or female needs a hobby that you have to do and nothing else can leak in. A lot of people it's archery or golf or for me now it's jujitsu because when somebody's strangling you, you can't think about what do I got to do tomorrow.
Exactly.
So you have those things that you've got to give everything to. And then when I was driving home, I was just like, you just get this sense of euphoria that everything is simple again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where, when I do a lot of my coaching is we get to the point where we just make life a lot harder than it has to be. Totally. I think I'm the poster child for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you talked earlier about it, you being your own worst enemy, and that's a common thing. I'm certainly my own worst enemy. And sometimes you're in those moments and you're like, I don't know. I'll be very personal. When I was really thinning my hair, when I tried to still have hair, but it was really thin, and I'd go into a room, and all I could think about was everybody's looking at me and making fun of me for balding, and it would be so hyper focused on it that I'd ultimately make a joke about it, and then they would actually pay attention to it.
Uh-huh.
99% of the time I walked into a room, nobody cared about me at all in that room. They were thinking their own thoughts.
Yep.
Oh, whatever. Everybody's looking at my belly or, whatever it might be, the hole in my pants. And I never would have seen that because I'm not paying attention to them because I'm only worried about me.
Yep.
But when you do hyper focus on it, you guarantee the outcome because you make a comment about it, you make a joke about it. It affects everything you're doing. So, there's that fine balance about being in the moment, being organic, but not ignoring the risks or the dangers out there. So like I talk about the dysautonomia that I have, the overactive fight response that I have,
Mhm.
and basically the idea that you go caveman goes and they see a bear. Well, if they're not afraid of the bear, they're probably going to die.
Mhm.
Like, just to be real. So you
Yep.
need that fear.
Mhm.
Absolutely needs to be
Mhm.
there. So then all of a sudden, okay, well now I've seen fresh bear scat, and now I know, okay, there's probably a bear nearby.
Mhm.
But if I'm like overreactive to that and go run and hide, well, then I've missed out on the world because the bear's not right there.
Right.
See a bear, run,
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
See a bear scat, be aware there might be a bear nearby
Yep.
and just change your actions a little bit, put
Mhm.
yourself on high alert.
Mhm.
But if you ignore that, then you're going to find the odds of finding the bear and
Mhm.
dying go up. But there's an unhealthy point where you just say, well, I'm not leaving the cave anymore
Right.
because there's bears out there. And we see that. I think there's a lot in today's popular culture where this how far things are. And it's like,
See all extremes.
it's all extremes, but it's like, this one bad thing happened. Everybody that's like that must be doing this bad thing, and they
Yeah.
blanket it,
Mm.
and then it's like, no, that person did something bad,
Right.
or that person did something maybe it wasn't even bad, maybe just disagreed with it,
Mhm.
maybe didn't align with your morals, but it's not bad,
Mhm.
you know.
No, your reaction, everybody's reaction to something. I use the term very simply. Does it look weird?
Hmm.
Like if somebody does something and this was again why I'm famous for it. Do they go nuclear,
Right.
or they do something that you're like, what the hell's wrong with that person? Like that's a trauma that you haven't dealt with. Like you just haven't, because what happens to you is not any different. It's your reaction to it. And so as you get older and wiser, you start to get you get these same fight or flight responses to different things that happen, but you handle them a little bit more like, okay, I'm in my head, I'm yelling and screaming, but it's just in my head.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that's changed for me as a young man. I'm no less intense. I'm no less negative. Like I'm a glass half empty guy, but I know that's not real.
Right.
As a young man, I wasn't able to discern that.
Right.
And
Exactly.
so it becomes, those responses are now measured,
Exactly.
are now, I'm processing things. The pup wants to be involved. I'm
Well,
now processing things rather than reacting to things.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not.
Right.
Sorry for that break. The dog's being the dog.
Yep.
Um, but no, I mean, you're spot on
Yep.
that. Like, yeah, absolutely spot on.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting as you get older and wiser, and I think I checked out a podcast that you did. It might have even been a recent one where caring what people think to a point, but not allowing it to affect how you actually do things. You don't want to be arrogant and self-centered, conceited to a point where you're just a bull in a china shop everywhere you go. But you don't want what other people think to put you like a bull, like a deer in headlights.
Absolutely.
Like you've got to be comfortable in your own skin. And that's where when you hear men talking about women being crazy and you hear women talk about men being assholes, it's that.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Is be comfortable in your own skin, be confident, and when you hang out with people that are comfortable in your own skin or in their own skin, it's a zen thing to be around.
It is.
Even if they're like I have friends that are just dumpy and disheveled and they don't care. My father's one of them. Like he is comfortable with him, but for years as a kid, he would be driving around on his 2001 Harley Lowrider with a green members only jacket, electric blue sweatpants, and white orthopedic New Balance
That's hilarious.
and thinking he was the coolest guy in school.
Yeah.
And I mean, ignorance is total bliss.
Oh, for sure.
And I was embarrassed as hell, but looking back on it, I'm like, yeah, you go, Pop.
Yeah.
You know, like
You do
that's
you.
just that's healthy, not giving a shit.
Exactly.
You know, because he thought he was cool, and quite frankly, he knew he was cool.
Exactly.
You know, so those
Exactly.
are that's you get to a point in life. You know, me and my pop have had a lot of issues, but look, he's never had a concern for what other people thought of him,
That's awesome.
and that's meant to not have that. Like that's it takes a lot of people. Some people don't get that in
Yeah.
life.
Well, let me ask you this: was he concerned about other people? Like, not that he didn't care about them at all, but was he judgmental of other people, or was he
No,
more?
not really.
Because I think I just had this realization that in these situations, when you are not confident in yourself,
Oh yeah,
you are judgmental of everybody else because
always.
you're covering. It's all reaction. It's all protection to yourself. So
You're mirroring everything.
you're looking for the things that you don't like in yourself and other people. And part of that's to feel good, to make yourself feel better about you doing it, and kind of bring yourself to make sure everybody's on the same level. But I think when you do have that true confidence, not arrogance, confidence, you're not worried about other people at all. I mean, you care about other people, you're not worried about them.
Well, you hear it all the time. You get what you give. I mean, that's with everything in life. You know, I say it even down to the emails I send. Is like yesterday, I had to do sales emails, you know, and they had to be organic and kind and so I take my deep breaths that I did before I came in here, and I get in this real good mood, play with the puppy, you know, get in
Yeah,
this really good zone. And then I start sending out emails, and I'll be damned, the responses on those emails is it's free flowing.
oh yeah,
Versus if I go in and it's like, okay, I have 15 emails, I can send all these out. Nobody, that's all contrived.
exactly.
It's felt.
Yep,
You know, and in real life, that's exacerbated tenfold. Like if you go into anything and you're not in the moment, kind, loving, you
it's the
know,
dog.
exactly.
Exactly.
They know. Good segue.
Exactly. Well, I mean, I'll say this: like, I'm always such a perfectionist, and everything has to be perfect. That, like, the barking going out, these microphones are so sensitive. I'm sure everybody's been hearing the barking, but I would just either start over or try to edit it out.
Mhm.
But getting up and letting a dog in and doing all that, it's just
Well, that
why
is
not?
perfect.
Why not? And I listen to Dax Shepard, Armchair Expert, and there's always a dog in the background or something. I'm like, these people actually get paid to do this, like a lot of money,
Yeah.
and theirs have very natural things. So why am I trying to make mine so perfect? It doesn't need to be perfect.
No, and then you come to find out that life and all of its things that aren't perfect is what makes it
Yep.
perfect. You know, and you see that, and this is with marketing, you see a lot of the people now like not using cameras and just using phones and,
Hmm.
you know, being as making all the mistakes because that's what comes across as real.
Yeah.
And you see it, you know, I have friends of mine that are designing everything through AI, and I feel the AI.
Oh yeah, you can for
Like
sure.
it's not like a dude. It's like, dude, I don't like the way that feels. That's fake.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I know. It's a fake guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I know. I can sense it.
Yeah.
You know, like I want authentic.
Yeah.
And perfection isn't human.
No, it's not.
You know, I like the mistakes. I mean, when people are stammering, or I think you see that in TV, it's like when somebody's measured, I'm like wondering, what are you trying to sell me?
Yeah.
Or what are you trying to skate past me? Are you a politician? Or,
Yeah.
you know, it
Exactly.
just comes off like, I don't want to be around that,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
Versus opening the door for the dog. Yeah. Hey, everybody's like, yeah, well, that's happened to me.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think, it's COVID for all the negatives it had, certainly in the time frame, not disease specifically, the time frame and the social experiments that went along with that. But I think it did open up a more organicness to business
Mhm.
with Zoom. And yeah, you're gonna have a dog barking at the mailman,
Mhm.
or mail person, I should say, or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? Like, in a meeting, those things are gonna happen. You're homeschooling your kids because schools are closed.
Yeah, just don't take your genitals out.
Exactly, exactly.
I think that
Don't
was
take your
the
laptop
only
to the
rule we
bathroom.
figured
Yeah,
out.
don't
Was
take your
like,
laptop to the bathroom.
yeah.
Leave it in the office of accounts. But yeah, no, I mean, like, having kids run into a meeting, like,
Mhm.
and even just like, from my perspective, and now, was it in my head or was it a real? But being on a phone call and the kids being loud, I was always so worried about that, like a work call.
Mhm.
I'd step outside, I'd stand out in the freezing cold because I didn't want the noise there. I wanted to come across as professional. And yeah, I don't want it on there all the time. I don't want it there,
Mhm.
But it's like, yeah, I'm a person, and I'm talking to you at 8:30 at night. You're gonna hear my kids.
Yeah.
Like that is what's gonna be.
Yeah.
Or I'm talking to them on vacation.
Mhm.
You're gonna hear my kids,
Mhm.
and that's okay.
Well, what you might think is something that hurts the call, they're likely looking at as something that makes you genuine.
Right.
Same thing as like I always think back of like when you go out and thinking people are looking at your hair, you don't look good today. Like I always think back to this a girlfriend I had years ago, it was the second year after college, and I was in her eyeglass store, and I was having one of those I look like crap days, and she was gorgeous, 6'2", blonde, and I was like kind of stammering, and you know, walked out, and I came in there because one of her employees was a friend of mine, and I thought I was having a bad look day, and I was feeling pretty bad about myself anyway. I was like, oh, it's the wrong time to walk in and see this gorgeous woman. The next day, my friend tells me, "Hey, Kim wants to meet you. Can you come back to the store? She wants to ask you out." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
That was my. I was like, "Crap." And it was just dawned on me.
Yeah.
Like again, I'm thinking all the way back then. It's like those days you think you look your worst. Don't take your own word for it. Like it's
Exactly.
not real. Like
Exactly.
somebody else is looking at you in a whole different light, and that's one of those things where you just got to let go.
Exactly.
I think that comes more with age.
It does.
You
It
know,
does.
kids are just under a microscope, but you know, it's one of those things where it's never as bad or it's never as good as you think it
Oh,
is.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's always somewhere in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's was it the chapter 13 of The Untethered Soul
Okay.
is the secret of the middle way.
Okay.
And it's, you know, what I take from life is about the middle way. The problem is all the fun is on the extremes.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's like, how do I stay in the middle and just keep my toe dipped in the extremes all along the way?
Exactly. Exactly. Reach out and touch it every once in a while.
Yeah,
If you don't want to live there.
just it's like riding in a boat in the middle and just having your fingers in the extremes.
Exactly. Exactly. Certainly don't want to live there, but it's
No,
it's nice to get there.
it's a young man's game to live in the extremes.
It is.
You don't find too many extremes at old age.
No.
Like you don't see too many fat old people.
It's true.
You know, you don't. Keith Richards bucks that trend.
Yes. I was getting ready to say the exact same. There's a couple of them that are like, maybe you're an alien
Yeah.
or you're a robot. I'm not sure you're an actual human being.
I was just watching a documentary on Hunter S. Thompson,
Okay. Yeah.
one of those guys.
Yeah.
You know, like you wonder why he ain't around.
Exactly.
Well, look at his diet.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And rock stars, you know, Jimi Hendrix, Morrison.
When they were just saying it, I just got done listening to a podcast where Bill Murray was on with Rogan. And Bill Murray is just an all timer for me. I met
Absolutely.
him, 20 some years ago, just in passing. And he was just the nicest guy. And hearing his whole lifespan with all the guys and girls he hung out with, I mean, Hunter S. Thompson lived in his guest house.
That's wild.
I was like, oh my God, I want to hear
Yeah.
your story.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, but that's the secret of kind of, okay, who can live a fast lifestyle and still look good at an old age and not be shot.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
Like, what are those secrets?
Exactly.
You know?
I mean, if you want me to be frank, I think it's being in the present is one of the big secrets there. Now, if you're living in the fast lane, you're living in the extreme wild, you probably are overly worried about being in the present
Yeah.
because you're not worried about ramifications, repercussions.
Right.
So there's some kind of balance there. But all those people you think of, like, they enjoy the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as long as it didn't get so bad where the drug
Mhm.
overtook them.
Yeah.
You know, it's really not about any of the other vices that kill you. They make life harder.
Yeah.
You know, the drugs are what kill you. You know,
Exactly.
they were just saying that John Belushi, well, he died of a speedball, but that was the first speedball he had ever done.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I did not know that.
I didn't not know that either.
Huh.
And I was like, holy crap.
What's the difference in a speedball and Coke?
Speedball is coke and heroin combined.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's a rush.
Yeah,
That's
legit.
what Chris Farley, I believe, died same way.
Mm.
And I think it's still rumor. I haven't confirmed it. I think he was out with Dennis Rodman the night before. He was killed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just you look at those guys and yeah, he it wasn't his first speedball,
No.
but those are the things you're going to live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
You've got to find a way to have some healthy things, or usually they fill those voids.
Mm-hmm.
You see it a lot with the members of the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Bob Weir in particular. You know, Bob, big time partier and known for it, and then turned the switch.
Yeah.
Was like, oh, our band leader died. I better pivot.
Right.
You know, and filling those negative habits, and this is kind of what I teach, is just filling them with positive
Mm-hmm.
things. It's still the same dopamine receptors. You just have to figure out which ones are going to be good for you and still give you the rush.
Exactly.
You know, it's a lot of, my brother with drinking, it became climbing. For me, it was cocaine, it became martial arts. You have to find something that gives you that thing. And then you put all those good habits and you stack good habits.
Oh yeah.
And now you turn around 10 years later and you're like, oh, there's no chaos.
Yeah.
I still got the rush, but now there's no chaos.
Right.
You know,
Well, the key word there is habits. I'm all about trying to build the habits. So you can do the action. So my analogy I give all the time, like I want to lose weight. So I decide I go out to lunch and I have a salad instead of the burger.
Mhm.
Cool. Good decision. Healthy. Whether it's actually less calorie or not, you could argue depending what dressing. Certainly more nutrients, more vitamins in the salad than going to be in the burger. Cool. Great. I did it one time. Am I losing weight? No,
Mhm.
not at all. Now, if I make it a habit to have salads at lunch, every time
Mhm.
there's a salad option at a restaurant, I go that way. Yes, then I will lose weight because that is now a habit.
Mhm.
If I go for a walk right now and I walk to the reservoir and back one time, was it healthy? Was it good? Sure.
Mhm.
Did I get some mental enjoyment out of it? Absolutely.
Mhm.
That's not helping me lose weight unless I do it every day
Mhm.
or almost every day. So it's the habit that is so vital for sure.
It's what stinks, and I've learned this in working recently, building a skincare line and working with med spas and dermatologists, and that space is all instant gratification.
Yeah.
It's all aesthetics. It's surface level, and anything you sell or do in the aesthetic space is if they don't have that instant wow factor, they ain't coming back.
Yep.
And then coupled with that is they need the long term wow factor too.
Yep.
And that's where fitness and nutrition, you get the long term, but there's not a lot of immediate gratification of, oh, that's a rush, an endorphin flood. It's just like, oh, I hurt.
Exactly.
I'm
It's the
not
opposite
doing
of
that. It's
positive.
the
It's a negative.
opposite, right?
Yeah.
So getting those things started, it's very, very difficult unless, there's certain things, whether it's certain supplements, certain exercises, certain recovery technologies, certain practitioners that have certain things that they've found that whether you're training somebody and they have that one thing, it was like, oh, I haven't been able to do that since high school.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I used to have brain fog. Now I don't. Whatever that little thing is that gets that action item to duplicate.
Yep.
Because you just got to get momentum.
Yep.
Everything is momentum, good and bad habits. Just you got to get the momentum. But if you don't have the instant gratification, then you're just going on your own sheer determination.
Yeah.
And what happens if you don't have that yet?
Exactly.
You and I, we're drivers. Like, we know what it means. Like, we don't get down on ourselves too long, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then we're like, nope,
Yeah.
we're back. That's our muscle memory. It's a groove. But
Exactly.
if you don't have that groove built yet, you go back to the couch.
Exactly.
You go back to lazy. You go back to not paying your bills. You go back to not doing the right things. What's that instant gratification that keeps you going, keeps you going, keeps you going, keeps you going? And then now you bring in what other habit? And then you start stacking that.
Yep.
And then another good habit. And before you know it, you've got all these habits where now you don't have to worry about life because you can just kind of trust your instincts.
Exactly.
And that's where as a kid, I made life hard partly because I was always told I was wrong. I was just a black sheep with everything,
Yeah.
and I was antagonistic.
Mm-hmm.
And so my parents were really good at yelling and telling me, "Nope, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong." That became the muscle memory.
Exactly.
Well, we were talking about psychedelics, is it was a psychedelic experiment for me that was a dawn on me, like, not only are you not doing it wrong, you have to trust you because you're doing it exponentially right, and you got to trust the process. And as soon as I pivoted off of that old muscle memory and started a new one and started a new groove, now these new instincts were like, uh, but to pivot off of that old one, it was hard.
So hard.
There's 45 years of groove.
Yeah.
So what do you do when that's the groove? That's the groove. Well, first off, you have to hate the groove.
Right.
You have to hate where that is. You got to start it. You got to get a little instant gratification, but I know what it means to do things that suck every day.
Mm-hmm.
You start to hear it more and more now with
Mm-hmm.
Rogan and cold plunges and just leaning into workouts, the David Goggins of the world. I mean, I love it. You lean into those things that suck, because if you do those things that suck often enough, when things that you don't want to do in life pop up, you don't shy away, you lean in.
Correct.
And same thing when things pop up in your life that you don't like about yourself.
Right.
Like I had great relationships, and then one thing would happen, I'd go nuclear, and it would destroy everything I did in that relationship.
Right.
I didn't like that characteristic. Had to fix it.
Right. Exactly.
Took a long time, took a whole bunch of doing new things, getting that new muscle memory. Every time I was wanting to yell at somebody, like, almost give myself an aneurysm trying to hold it in.
Mm-hmm.
But a couple, 2, 3, 5 times of holding it in, now it just is in my head and it doesn't come out my mouth.
Yeah.
I would have
Exactly.
never thought I could censor myself like that.
It's so hard.
But again, these are just, you got to retrain these habits.
Yeah.
And it's without that instant gratification, it's tough. So that's what I really try to give everybody that's trying to start something new from something old.
Yep.
Is there something they can hang their hat on to go, oh, I like that?
Yeah. Well, and what I do, I've never liked working out ever. As a kid, as an adult, like it's never been my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Forced myself to do it, and with my back issues, like really, doctors told me I should just walk. That's really the exercise that is best for me. Nothing else is probably that good for me. Walk. So I try to walk. Well, in my opinion, and I like walking outside, but I don't like the cold. So I'm not going to walk outside if it's freezing cold. And I don't like the super hot. So I'm not going to walk outside if it's super hot. But when it's nice weather, I will. And I get instant gratification from that because I put on an audiobook. I get to see nature. I get to smell fresh air. Like that is a win.
Mm-hmm.
Just going down to the basement on the treadmill and walking for a half hour, there is zero instant gratification to that for me. But what I did, we have the Peloton tread. It's got this big screen and you can hook up your TV subscriptions to it. So I pick a show that I only watch on the treadmill. I refuse to watch it from bed or from the couch or on the iPad out of town or I only watch that show on the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
That's an instant gratification that gets me down there to do it because I want to know what's going on next in the show and I watch a half hour of it, move on.
It's a really cool know thyself. It's
Exactly.
like you almost have to put up these little guardrails. Because, for me, it's like, what are the things that I have naturally gone off the rails on? How do I trick myself into doing the right thing?
Right. And so you have to celebrate your wins. That's something that I struggle with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mourn my losses. Every single loss, everything I've done that I do not think I did 100% right, I beat myself up
Just
over.
doing them.
But I don't celebrate my wins. And when I do, it's very short lived. And I immediately think of all the things that I could have done better in that win. Yeah, it was a win, but we still let that goal in or whatever, whatever it is. So it's like, how do I then reward myself with something that gives me that dopamine kick when I do the thing that I wanted to do?
Mm-hmm.
Sit down and read for 20 minutes. I love reading.
Yeah. That's why writing a to-do list and just having the check marks, just to give yourself that gratification, being able to check the box.
Exactly.
Like for me, it's not easy to celebrate your wins. I mean, most of us were grown up with parents that, if we're drivers, they were drivers too. So they were always pointing out, could have done this better, could have done this better, could have done that better. I mean, that's the generation we grew up in. It wasn't very feelings oriented, rub some dirt on it.
Exactly.
There was none of, and so we're a product of how we grew up.
Oh, 100%.
But it's interesting now how you put things in place to ensure you do the right things.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're a driver, you figured out little ways. Like, give you an example, like with the human body, it's a self-correcting organism. It always wants to repair itself. Say you break a leg and you don't get it set right. Well, you might have a weird gait, but your body is going to work around it.
Exactly.
You know, the same thing with everything we do in life. If every mess up you have, your body's going to work around it. You know, you can start over. Your body's going to work around it. You know, it's just one of those things where you just got to keep moving forward. And if you don't like the way you're doing something, tweak it.
Exactly.
You know, it's again, we make things a lot harder than they have to be, and we're usually just over examining it too much.
Yeah.
You know, I have to write that down to myself is just slow down.
Yep.
Don't overthink it.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That's my saying for this year is slow down, analyze, act. Like slow down, make a decision, act.
Yep.
Instead of react, I find myself personally, I either react and I don't necessarily do what I really wanted to do, or I overanalyze and I never get to act, or I've made the wrong decision because I've thought too much about it. I don't know if there's a meme that's going around social media now that's like talking about ADD, ADHD, and how in the little problems, somebody with ADHD will like, I'm not prepared for this. This is the end of the world. Blah, 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 blah. Like they ran out of your favorite type of coffee at Starbucks or whatever. It's like, because the world's ending because it wasn't what you were expecting. Huge problem. Your instincts kick in. You tackle. You know, I've been ready for this my whole life, and you tackle the problem. That is 100% me. Like those little things set me off. The big things, I'm cool as a cucumber.
That's an easier problem to handle.
Right.
If it's the big ones that you're having issues with, well, that can create havoc.
Correct.
You know, the little things, well, that's just mostly in my head.
Yeah.
You know, and so to know that is peaceful in and of itself.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to make sure that I'm stacking good day after good day after good day after good day. And then you look back 5 years later and you're like,
It was a good 5 years.
that's the masterpiece.
Exactly.
You know, it's not just putting together this big master plan. It's little daily things. Like every night before you go to bed, you putting your to-do list together. Every day you executing on that. Not I never get everything on that to-do list done, but then I just roll them over.
Yeah.
And then the next day is were you diligent? You know, a lot of now that my routine isn't quite what it was out in Colorado, my workout in the afternoon's been suffering. And the next day I always feel like, I should have, all right, I got to get better this day.
Exactly.
It's okay to mess up.
Right.
Lean into it the next day. I'm not missing it. Oh, I missed it again today. Damn it. All right, I'm going to get the next day.
Exactly.
You can't be so like, well, now I'm never going to do it because it's just, no.
Right.
You mentioned reading.
Yep.
30 minutes of reading has been on my to-do list for 7 months and I haven't done it.
Yep.
It's always the last thing because it's always written down, intentional.
Yep.
I never get to it, but it's always written down the next day.
Yeah.
You know, and now those days when I actually get to read, like, oh, do I feel like $1,000,000?
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing on my to-do list, but it's been one of those things that I don't really want to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I probably told you, but I have the morning routine or daily routine that I came up with, the acronym that I have fallen off of doing, and I'm going to get back to it. It's on the checklist on the back of my desk. I even have it, but I call it jamming. So these are the things that I want to do on a daily basis. They're not all necessarily morning activities, but you start in the morning with them. The J stands for journaling. I'm a big believer in journaling. There's an app on your iPhone that's from Apple called Journal. It's really cool. I fell off doing it. I got to get back to it. But it actually pulls like pictures from your photo album and
really?
events
I'll
and
have to
trips.
look into it.
And it just says, reflect on this. Like what's something that happened there? And just it forces you to think back on things that have happened recently, but then actually analyze them and not just stay surface level. So that's cool. So J is for journaling. The first A is for aqua. So I try to drink a gallon of water a day. Second A is for affirmations. Big believer. Your mind does not know the difference of you joking that you're an idiot and somebody calling you an idiot.
Yeah.
It hears the same words and it has the same reaction.
No, I always struggle with that because being a little self-deprecating, it adds brevity. It adds, you know, I get that, yeah, you're saying the same things, but I don't know if I fully agree with it because it does make conversation. And for me, it keeps my ego in check.
Well, that's sometimes what you need. So sometimes your ego can start running
But
crazy
I've
and
been
you need to be
thinking
checked
that. The
back.
reason I bring
Yeah,
it up is because it's one of the things that I've been told, Adam, even if you're joking, don't say that.
exactly.
You know, like, and I'm like, yeah, you're probably right. It does make sense. It does resonate with me, even though I like those people that take shots of themselves or don't take themselves too seriously or,
Sure.
but I think, I guess you're right. There's a fine line
But you
between,
also get in the habit of doing it.
yeah,
So it can be a super useful tool in conversation, trying to get, level with somebody. If there's, some kind of like, oh, they think you're being too much or whatever, to throw that first jab at yourself, it can be super useful for connection. And
but don't make it a habit
but
because
the
you
habit
might,
of it, it
yeah,
starts self-repeating. So the opposite is true on affirmations. I'm not talking Stuart Smiley stuff or whatever that Stuart Smiley, whatever it
yeah,
is. I'm not like,
yeah.
gosh darn it,
I
people
put
like
that
me.
mean all the time.
But
Yeah.
like, I'm successful.
Hmm.
I am productive.
Hmm.
I'm a good father.
Hmm.
I'm a good husband. Just simple things.
Hmm.
It does help. So we've J for journaling, A for aqua, A for affirmations, M for movement. So some kind of movement, exercise, walking, lifting weights, yoga, whatever. M for meditation, big believer in meditation. That's kind of where I want to end this is on meditation.
Hmm.
I for intentionality, and that's kind of what brought me back to this. My intentionality is organizing my day. So looking at my day in the morning
Hmm.
and laying out what I have, and then laying out the things that I also want to do that are not to say time sensitive,
Hmm.
but are those actions, going ahead and mapping them in a time sensitive way in the calendar for
Yep.
that day.
Yep.
Flexibility, you can move stuff around, but like, let's get a real plan
Got
for
to
the
see
day.
it.
And then the last ends for novel for reading.
Hmm.
So if I can do those things on a daily or almost daily basis,
Hmm.
they set my days up for success.
Hmm.
I feel great. I feel connected.
You have a plan.
I feel grounded. I feel like present. So yeah, for sure.
I love how everybody comes at things their own way. That's what I love about different self-help books and for that matter, different religions
Yeah.
is, I believe I've just kind of taken a little piece from just about everybody. I've made my own amalgam religion,
Yep.
my own amalgam self-help book,
Yep.
but that way of mapping out your day, everybody should have a way that works for them.
Yep.
I had my buddy Connor come to me, and it's what got my coaching gig really started was saying, hey, you organize your life really well. My life is dictated to me.
Right.
How do you dictate to life and not have life dictate to you? And I was like, wow, that's a big statement. I was like, well, it's really just kind of figuring out you, but it really goes back to just what you were saying is kind of understanding what that control looks like.
Exactly.
Like that's putting your day together intentionally, whether it's in the morning or the night before. You're going to have times when it goes off the rails, but you've got that roadmap.
Correct.
If you don't have a roadmap, if you don't have a plan, that's when a wife calls and now you're on the phone 15 minutes with her during your workday, and now your brain's on that 5 minutes after the call. Now it's leaked into the business meeting. Now you're 5 minutes late, you leave, and now you're rushing into the next meeting. You're 5 minutes late and now you're all flustered,
Yep.
and now you don't have control of your day, and it looks like from the outside you don't have any control of your day. Well, all that, if you would have planned your day a little better,
Mm-hmm.
none of that happens.
Yep.
You're calm, cool, and collected the whole time.
Yep.
And typically, you're planning things better. For example, like just little things like, okay, it takes an hour to get into Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a lot in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Anything, you can always sit in the car for 5, 10 minutes before the meeting, take a couple deep breaths. You're not stressed out. You're nice and relaxed, calm, cool, and collected. Or you can be rushing like a crazy person. Worse yet, my brother, who is one of the best GCs on the planet, says yes to too many different things.
Yep.
And now he's basically called a liar, and his integrity gets called into question, not because he lacks integrity, because he can't say no.
Yeah.
And he can't time block that.
Well,
And if you're planning your day before you go to bed the night before or right when you get up in the morning, that kind of stuff doesn't happen.
exactly.
Again,
Exactly.
keep it simple, stupid. Everybody's got their way to organize, but you better be intentional.
And you better do it.
Otherwise, you're just going to fly around and everybody's going to be leading you.
That's
Not
exactly
that you
right.
can't be successful,
That's exactly right.
but you're going to be running ragged.
Yeah.
You
100%.
know?
Yeah. So I mentioned meditation. I know you're a big meditator like I am. And I love like the long meditations, the guided meditations. I do that during acupuncture once a week. but I also love the like 30-second meditation,
Hmm.
5-minute meditation.
Hmm.
So what I found for me, and I want to hear if you have a little hack, is there's moments where you're starting to feel flustered, you're starting to feel that you're spiraling, you're hijacked, if you will. Is I try to take a quick deep breath,
Hmm.
blow it all the way out, and sometimes I'll box breathe, which is
Hmm.
just a super simple way.
Yep.
But as I'm doing that, I ask myself, I wonder what your next thought will be. And that hack, because
You
your brain
remove yourself.
your brain can't answer the question, so it just starts going in a loop, and that's all. What do I next thought about? I wonder what it'll be. I wonder what it'll be. I wonder what it'll be. And all of a sudden, whatever has hijacked you and running with it, anxiety or whatever it is, gone.
Yeah.
I also saw something today. If you're ever in like a panic attack kind of mode, like just salt, a good chunk of salt right on your tongue will snap you out of it because your brain can only go. It's such a shock that your brain completely loses everything else and focuses only on that. You forget whatever emotion was hijacking you.
Well, when we talk about these instant gratification things or hacks, if you will, is
Mhm.
you need those.
Mhm.
Like you won't overcome things otherwise.
Yeah.
Like one of my Reiki therapists, she actually does Reiki while she does therapy on you. Sharon Harvey Alexander out of Boulder. She wrote a book called Learning to Live, Learning to Breathe. And all these different breathing techniques to whether you are athletic, whether you're stressed. She was an Olympic cyclist and also climbed Everest.
Okay.
And so for me as an athlete, I'm like, all right, I'm sold.
Yeah.
Like, you have a 65-year-old woman that's done those two things and she's a Reiki master. All right, I'm listening.
Yeah.
And as she was going around doing Reiki around me, she was teaching me these different breathing techniques. And just the easiest one is what we call the nervous system reset.
Hmm.
And that's 3 seconds in through the nose, pause for a second, and 3 seconds out, and do it 3 times.
Yep.
And by the second one, you're starting to feel different. But by the third one, it just drops you down to a lower decibel.
Yeah.
So in the moment when things are stressed and I need an immediate shift, that's the go-to
Yeah.
because that's in the car, that's before an argument, that's whenever I have that tool in my tool bag.
Yeah.
But then the long-term meditation is it's got to be a hike
Hmm.
by myself, go back into nature, and it's literally set a stopwatch for 5 minutes of silence.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, well, most people say don't bring pads and pens and things like that in your meditation. I like it
Yeah.
because those things that hit
Hmm.
when meditation is at its most between you and God
Hmm.
are kernels from God.
Right.
And I don't want to lose them. So I'm writing those things down right and left.
Exactly.
You know, like one of the biggest ones was this was such a cool, it just makes total sense because I was really, really stressed and I needed something. And I'm like, God, I'm about to lose it. Like, I don't have anybody looking out it for me. It's only me. I'm out here on an island. And it was just a premonition that, what do you mean you're out there on an island? Everybody has three angels. And I was like, all right, tell me more. Three angels? And I'm starting to write stuff down. I was like, yeah, everybody's got three, two that were people and one that was never a person. One of the people knew you during life, so they have a rooting interest for you. One, it's just their job in the afterlife. So they're looking out for you, but it's an impartial third party.
Hmm.
And the third was never a human being. So they've got this viewpoint of humanity that is just angelic.
Hmm.
So shut the hell up. Not only are you not out there alone, but you've got these three people.
That's awesome.
And I was like, whoa. And not only does that make me feel peaceful right now, but it does make sense
Yeah.
because I've always known and I've leaned in the fact that there is an afterlife and it's not, you do have stuff to do.
Exactly.
And so that makes sense that, now I started figuring out, okay, who might those two people be?
Right.
Because if I know one of them, okay, I'm watching these things
Exactly.
around my life and who's the impartial third party I'm just dying to meet,
Exactly.
like,
Exactly. That is so cool.
so, but yeah,
That is
just
so cool.
those meditations bring you things that you can use, but you need those ones in the moment.
Yep.
And then you need those ones where I need something big,
Correct. Yep.
But meditation, it's so tough to get there. I like your triggers.
Yeah.
For me, it's just because I'm so moving all the time. It's just taking 5 minutes of silence, setting a stopwatch
Yep.
and just sitting there And that was so hard.
Yeah.
And then it became like boom.
So I like your nervous system reset, and something I've never done it that way. I've always done the box breathing version of it, but I like that because another thing I've done, and I would put these two together, is usually this is like a driving thing when like road rage starts to set in
Mm-hmm.
because people do not know how to drive. It is
Yeah.
a privilege, not a right.
Uh-huh.
I wish we thought of it that way. Is I grab or I touch three physical things: steering wheel, shifter, coffee, and doing that brings you out of your head, brings you out of the realm inside your head and back to being in the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
So if you tie that with the breathing, I think that would be like an instant snap out.
Well, you need these
Hmm.
things. Like, it's why when you read these different books or you hear it on TV or whatever, the ones that resonate with you, listen to. Like in religion, like, do I listen to 10 Commandments? Yeah, okay. But some of the stuff in the Bible, I instinctually go, well, that's crap.
Right.
Well, then it doesn't align with me.
Correct.
Same thing with everything you hear self-help books. Some of it you'll read 180 pages and only 3 pages go, oh, that's all I'll take from it.
Correct. But
But
those three
that's fine.
pages
Yeah.
could be life changing.
It gives you those
Yep.
kernels. Like the salt. That's what I'll take. It's like, oh, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
And those are the little instant gratification things that
Yeah.
can be life changers because it keeps you out of the extremes just by having a little hack.
Hmm.
Life I think is literally the first half is figuring out your own meat suit, however that is, and then the second half is kicking ass within it.
So there's a great book that I've been slow reading called The Second Mountain. And I'll share that with you offline. But it's basically the first mountain is in life, and it's typically like being successful in business or career or whatever. And then you crest that, and then you feel a void. And then the second mountain is being a better human, making the world a better
Mm-hmm.
place. And it's a really, really good book. It's kind of dry, so it's not one that's like fun to read, which is why I'm taking so long to read it. But they're
You
every
reading it or you listening?
I'm
to
reading it. So
Okay.
and I
Okay.
do
That
both.
makes it a little tougher too.
It does, but I find books like that when I do audio, I just zone out. I
And
just
I can't underline. I can't,
correct. Correct.
highlight. I want to go back and read my pulls from every book.
Exactly.
If it's a self-help book,
Yeah.
I'll listen to it, but I'm like, I gotta buy that one and
Yeah.
mark it
But I
up.
highly recommend it. You should check it out.
The second,
The Second Mountain
second,
by David Brooks, I think is his name.
love it.
So, but on the note we made before about the intentionality of the day, I do have to wrap up because I
Yeah.
do have to get to a listing appointment.
Love it.
Parents of past clients of mine, which is super awesome. Super love when the business comes organically like that.
Oh, yeah.
But Adam, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad to continue to be friends with you and the
Push
future
each
that that's
other.
going to have. Exactly.
That's
for each other.
why. I mean, you keep these people in our worlds is because we're here on a journey. This is a gift to be here. Like, what are you doing? Like on one of my old pair of sneakers, one of my martial arts senseis was like, Adam, I want you stenciling on your shoes, never done.
Right.
Because no matter how much you train, no matter how much you do, you're never done.
Exactly.
And so surround yourself with the people in your world that make you a better version of you. And that's why you're in my world.
Exactly. Yep. I'm all about that.
Well,
And shoot me a text or something with any of the products because I'll put in the show notes anybody that's interested in your products. And you're handing me one now if you're seeing on video.
love it.
But yeah, no, I'll definitely put a link to it. And thank you again for joining us. This has been Bird Seeds with Joe Bird. Have a wonderful day.